All right. That was something.
It was.
You just spent 60 minutes watching the Texas debate here live on WFAA and WFAA+. We are glad you are with us. I am Teresa Woodard, an anchor and reporter here at WFAA up in Dallas. I am joined by Bud Kennedy, a columnist for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and Katie Sherritt, a former political columnist, now a political commentator. All right, let's get things started by just gut reactions, Bud and Katie. What do you think? Bud, we'll start with you.
Teresa, I'm looking all around. We're in the WFAA newsroom. I'm looking all around to see where the fire extinguisher is because we should have located it before this debate. I thought we were going to need it in the middle of the debate. I think they certainly needed it in the studio. Ted Cruz, he's stronger than garlic. You know, he came every bit of the captain of the debate team. He brought every bit of force, every bit of energy. Brought every bit of all of the Ted Cruz replaying his greatest hits from 2012, 2016, 2018. Defund the police, boys and girls locker rooms. You know, now Kamala Harris, but he got around to Nancy Pelosi too.
Right.
It was the Ted Cruz that we've seen debating every time. Colin Harris stood his ground better than many people have against Ted Cruz, and said some things that will be very popular with viewers, I think. But it was a incendiary event.
All right, Katie, your impressions.
It was. I mean, Ted was certainly loud. I felt like I was getting screamed at.
I saw that in some of our chatter as I had the live chat that was up, and it did say a lot of people were saying, stop screaming.
And I thought that wasn't helpful to him, but it was a recitation of Ted's greatest hits.
And that is his character. That is
and
how
that
he
is
is.
how he is. I also was pleased and a little surprised at how well Allred stood his ground and was not at all intimidated and pushed back a couple of times. And I think Ted reacted to that. I think there were times when he was a little surprised at how strong Allred was. I also think that Ted did not, if he was hoping to moderate his image in this debate, that did not happen.
Okay,
Yeah.
Interesting observation.
That did not happen.
Yeah, let's talk about what any idea of Ted Cruz trying to go for the middle. What didn't come true. What we saw was Ted Cruz going to motivate hardline Republican voters,
Yes.
and obviously his greatest fear is that hardline Republicans disenchanted with President Trump won't show up, and he won't have the coattails to get elected on of having a presidential ticket. And so what he was doing tonight with every answer was doing his best to motivate hardline Republican
base.
voters to go out and vote. It was all talking to the base.
And tying himself to Trump as tight as he could again and again. I told President Trump to do this, and he did it.
Did that surprise you, Katie?
No,
No.
but I just thought it was interesting how powerful he did it again and again and again. And I think it speaks to he's trying to thread that needle. If the hardliners are getting a little weary of President Trump, he wants them to still vote for him.
So Colin Allred was talking to the undecided voters, the 3-4% in the middle, while Ted Cruz was talking to the base Republican voters and saying, hey, you all need to get out and vote.
Okay. All right, well, let me just reset for everyone here. So I'm Teresa Woodard from WFAA. We've got Bud Kennedy and Katie Sherritt who are with us to give us some analysis for the next couple of hours. We do have a live camera down in the spin room, and so if the candidates choose to go down to the spin room and talk to the media and answer questions or try to maybe spin something one way that they wish they wouldn't have said or try to reinforce something that they did said, we will bring you that coverage. We are going to revisit some of the key moments that happened during this debate over the course of the next couple of hours. We're going to analyze what was said and what wasn't said. I think that's important. We're going to also talk a little bit about the body language that we saw. And then in our 9 o'clock hour is when we expect for Jason Whiteley and Grover Jeffers to come up. They need a break. They need to take a pause for a moment, maybe go have something stiff to drink after going through that for 60 minutes. But then we'll have them come up and give us some of the things that maybe they saw that we couldn't see inside the studio.
We don't have anything here stiff to drink, Teresa.
I know, we've only got water. I should have supplied us with something else, huh? That's what it's going to take after that. Okay, so I think we're ready to show a couple of the moments that we thought kind of stood out. So Jay, Misaki, if you guys can hear me, are we good to play maybe the, okay, yeah, I'm getting the thumbs up. So let's start with one of the early moments in the debate, and this was the first question off the bat, I believe, and this was about the issue of abortion. Things got fiery within just a few moments of the debate starting, so let's take a listen, let's watch this, and then on the other side, Katie and Bud and I will discuss. Watch it.
I want to be very clear to the people of Texas. I support the protections and the restrictions under Roe. But Senator Cruz just called himself pro-life. You're not. You're not pro-life. It's not pro-life to deny women care so long that they can't have children anymore. It's not pro-life to force a victim of rape to carry their rapist's baby. It's not pro-life that our maternal mortality rate has skyrocketed up by 56%. That's not pro-life, Senator.
I've asked Congressman Allred twice about his voting record and the fact that he voted to strike down Texas's parental notification law and parental consent law. You haven't asked him about that. That is his record. He doesn't deny it. He gives language that is disconnected from the actual voting record he has. And listen, my view, I believe in democracy. If Congressman Allred does not like the decisions that the state legislature has made, if he doesn't like the decisions the governor has made, then he is welcome to run for state legislature or run for governor. But in Congress, neither one of us have a vote. I have not voted to strike down Texas's law. Congressman Allred has. Congressman Allred has voted to tell you, a mother at home, you have no right to know if your daughter's getting an abortion. That's an extreme position.
Okay, that's just a small sample of that exchange that went on for quite a while. Was that a win or a miss for either of those candidates?
Well, you know, Cruz never did answer the question about the
how he feels about the Texas abortion
no
ban.
exceptions. He never answered that, and I think that there's a reason for that. And I think this let's leave it up to the states that they default to. Well, if we're going to leave it up to the states, I think we leave it up to the women to make those decisions, not the state or the feds.
A win or a miss?
I'd like a count of how many questions were not answered in this debate. I think that's the fact question.
Not for Jason and Gromer.
But this,
they tried.
This was one of the most blatant because the question was specifically, as a Texan and as a father, do you agree with it? What would you tell your state senator, your state representative? How do you want them to vote when they represent you in Austin? And he totally avoided answering the question. It's just whatever the people decide. So it was blatant. I think that it was a miss for Senator Cruz. I think Congressman Allred had the more effective answer on this question. But Senator Cruz, again, was speaking to his partisan Republican voters and trying to get everybody fired up to go out and vote. He's scared to death, particularly on this issue. The Republicans are frightened that Donald Trump has become a squish on abortion and has become a squish on LGBT issues. And so many of the evangelical church faith and values voters that Ted Cruz relies on are not that excited about voting. He wants to make sure that those churches get organized, that the faith and values voters come out and vote, and give them somebody to vote for.
Hence the transgender issue as well.
Yeah, and that's certainly been something that's been inserted into this campaign.
And is not in the presidential campaign.
It was a discussion tonight, and I think we'll be able to play a clip of that in just a little while. I wanted to mention that we were doing a live poll on our YouTube channel, and on YouTube, 67% of people said that Colin Allred won this debate. Now, I will say...
so that's 2 out of 3?
67% to 33%. We don't know their partisan views.
We had more than 3 votes, though.
We've had more than 20,000 votes.
20,000 votes.
And so we don't know their views. We also don't know if this was a Colin Allred watch party, that was inside our stream and was voting on this. But I'm curious... I don't remember if in that clip we just showed with the abortion responses, if we saw it, but body language mattered to me tonight. I was certainly watching that closely, and I feel like I kept seeing Colin Allred sort of swaying a little bit, almost having to center himself, and he seemed as if he was he was rolling his eyes quite a bit. He really wanted to jump in, and then you would see with Ted Cruz sort of that standing there and kind of, just taking it all in. Body language wise, did anything stand out? Bud?
Oh, I thought I was on a cruise watching Allred. He was rocking back and forth, and then I realized it's like a linebacker rocking back and forth for the play to start. But that also is a sign of insecurity. And the fact that
to me, I thought it was maybe the wheels turning.
Ted Cruz just stands there like a steely-eyed figure. I mean, Ted Cruz has done this before, and Colin Allred
well,
is not
interesting
the captain.
I didn't read the shifting as a sign of insecurity. I read it as sort of unspent energy that Allred was. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, that was sort of what I received.
So you think
from
he was
that,
about
too.
to lunge at him? You think?
Well, no, I don't say that, but I just think that there was a lot of energy, and he was moving to kind of dissipate some of that. But I didn't read it as anxiety.
Yeah.
And Ted is the master of moments like this. So I was not at all surprised that he came across with his body language being.
And then Ted responded, said that the left wing is angry, and Colin Allred snarling and all these things that he.
Well, that's one of those where every accusation is a confession. Talk about angry and snarling. That would be.
Well, we've definitely, I know my email, I'm sure your emails have been blowing up with both sides sort of peppering the emails, giving their version of, no, this is the fact and this is the fact. And, the Cruz campaign is saying that Allred is lying, and the Allred campaign saying Cruz is spinning the facts. And so it's just, both campaigns are absolutely blowing up journalists' inbox, and just to sort of say, hey, here's what we think was the big win of the night.
We do know immediately, though, that there was the one fact check about the Olympic boxers, because
let's talk about that.
They were women. They've always been women. Their chromosomes are not matching. But they've been women their whole lives, and he said there are men that boxed in the Olympics. Nobody's ever been a man.
Transgender women competing.
Right. I'm certain that is something that will not land well in certain parts of the population, and other people will cheer for it because they believe it, even though it's been debunked and it's not true.
Right.
I think we might have, or at least we're queuing up the exchange. Okay, I think let's go to that next. Let's play the exchange where they were talking about transgender rights after that question, and then we'll be back on the other side.
This is, you don't have to be a former NFL linebacker to recognize a Hail Mary when you see one. This is a desperate, last-second attempt by Senator Cruz to distract you because he can't defend his own record. Listen, I'm a dad, I'm a Christian. Of course I don't support these ridiculous things that he's talking about. But what he wants you thinking about is kids in bathrooms, so you're not thinking about women in hospitals. Because it's indefensible. It's indefensible that we have Texas women being turned away from hospitals, bleeding out in their cars, in waiting rooms, being found by their husbands.
Let's just talk about his voting record. Again, you can go to allredfacts.com. You can see the actual votes. 4 times he has come out for men playing in women's sports, for boys playing in girls' sports. He is a co-sponsor, and he voted for a law called the Equality Act. The Equality Act mandated that boys be able to go in girls' bathrooms, in their locker rooms, in their changing rooms. He voted for it. That is his record. Number 2, there was a bill. It was a very simple bill. It was narrowly defined. It was protecting women in girls' sports. He voted no. The only issue on that bill was whether biological boys should compete against our daughters. That's not fair. Congressman Allred was an NFL linebacker. It is not fair for a man to compete against women.
Okay, so that was definitely a question. Actually, I guess all of the answers did seem to raise the blood pressure and raise the temperature, but that one in particular did. I thought it was interesting that Allred commented it's a Hail Mary, that this is something that's coming up at the end of the campaign, and that's what he said. He said basically this is a campaign issue because Ted Cruz is making it that.
Well, but also Allred didn't really say specifically what he meant with all these votes, and so this is another question where they avoided answering the question. I mean, the question was, now, are you talking about biological men? Are you talking about women who have gone through gender reassignment surgery? Is it okay for them to be on women's teams? What do you mean? Ted Cruz is calling. Obviously, he's calling everybody a man, even some women who've been women their whole lives. He's calling them men. But Ted Cruz, what Colin Allred may be saying, that it's, when they go through gender assignment surgery, they become women. I don't know. We didn't get the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Well, and that whole topic is an incredibly complex
It is.
Topic. But what concerns
Hard to
me,
answer in 90 or 60 seconds.
Exactly, and on either side. But I think he's right. Ted seems to be, if you were ever a man, you're always a man, and was willing to say that about some women who appear to be masculine, even though they are very clearly chromosomally women. What concerns me about this issue affects less than 1% of the population, not only in Texas, but in the United States. But what happens is that 82% of transgender individuals have considered suicide.
And that's right.
That is huge. 40% have actually attempted it. To attack this vulnerable a population is horrifying to me, and that Cruz is willing to put those people at risk to score political points, I find deeply troubling.
But
And
no-
I wish that Allred had pushed back a little bit more about that.
But notice even Cruz, because he's found out that it's not popular to attack transgender population by name, he does not use the word very much. In the commercials he says no boys and girls locker rooms. He
Right.
doesn't say no transgender. It's like even Senator Cruz is learned that it is not popular to attack transgender population. He attacks the policy.
All right, I have word that former Tarrant County Judge Glenn Whitley is in the spin room now. You know, he is a Republican, but he is supporting Democrat Colin Allred. So let's see if we can go live to the spin room and hear Glenn Whitley. Do we have that?
I don't believe that Texas is going to flip to a Democratic or a blue or even a purple, but I do think that this is a very important race, and I believe that Colin Allred is the right person at the right time, and someone who cares very much about the people of Texas and not just about the party. I can't say that enough. Washington, in a farewell address, said he distrusted the parties because he felt like they were more interested in doing things for themselves. I think that what we see in Cruz is exactly that. I think what we see in Colin Allred is someone who wants to support and work for the people of Texas. I think Colin Allred can win this race in Texas, but I don't see all of Texas going blue anytime soon.
All right, well, we just got the very end there
Right.
of Judge Glenn Whitley, but we heard him saying he doesn't think all of Texas is going to go blue right away, but he does believe that Colin Allred can win this race. What does it say to you, Bud, as someone who has deep roots, both of you do, in Tarrant County, but what does it say to you that Glenn Whitley is vocally supporting Colin Allred?
Glenn Whitley has a tremendous respect for government. He loves county government. He's been the national president of county government officers. He believes that government needs to handle people the right way. I personally didn't always agree with the way he handled things, but his effort was to build a government that people would believe in. He made county government much more professional. He took it out of the 50s and 60s in a lot of ways. So he really took offense at the January 6th attack on the Capitol, because whether it's Democrats or Republicans, he believes in people working together and the government doing the right thing for the people. And I believe that is what he's taken offense to, that he doesn't believe the senator does that. There's also some local loss of interest, not loss of interest, but there's some concern that Ted Cruz maybe hasn't supported Lockheed's F-35 and employment in Fort Worth enough, but that's another local issue.
And I think Glenn also was a true believer that the two-party system could be a healthy thing, that the two parties could help keep each other honest. And when he saw that, well, the Tea Party, and he saw movement in the Republican Party where they were moving totally away into from any bipartisanship into a very polarized form of government. That made him very uneasy.
Yeah.
Very uneasy.
So
What's interesting
before-
about Glenn
hold that
is-
thought for 1 second, because I think we have some other
Okay.
surrogates who are in the spin room right now. So if we can go dip back in live, we'll listen and we'll come back out and continue talking about Glenn Whitley. Let's see if we've got that live feed from the spin room.
Out and talk about how there was one sentence in some bill that was about something else, and that shows that they voted on something. It happened all the time in my first and second term in Congress with these motions to recommit, other things. There are all of these tricks and games, and frankly, that's what I assumed that Senator Cruz was talking about when he was talking about various votes. What you heard Congressman Allred say was that he defends and supports the equality of all Texans, all of our kids, all of our citizens, and that is what he was supporting, is what I support too, in the Equality Act. And the question he asked is the one we show us. Why
I
doesn't
got it.
Senator Cruz support the Equality Act? And defending he said on the stage that he supports the equality of all Texans, but he's running ads against the bill that does that. Thank you.
Follow-up question on that, please. The Equality Act, does that exclude boys playing sports with girls?
The
Not, what is the claim on your issue like that?
So the Equality Act, very simply, is a bill that says that you cannot discriminate. It amends the Civil Rights Acts from the 1960s, so you cannot discriminate against LGBTQ Americans in housing, in jury service, in accommodations on the basis of gender identity. That is the fundamental equality of all Americans. It is simply a bill against discrimination. And so those are the things that we take up. That is the bill that we've taken up in Congress, and that is what Senator Cruz is running ads against. Thank you.
Austin Denard.
Oh, hi. What did you make of Senator Cruz's sort of non-answers about what he thinks or doesn't think about the laws we have in Texas on abortion?
Well, you know, I'm not a particularly political person. I'm a Texan and I'm a mother of 3 children, and I'm also an OBGYN that's been practicing in the state for many years. And I'm also someone who had to travel out of state to get abortion care for a pregnancy that my husband and I really, really wanted, that had a lethal fetal diagnosis. So I really know what it feels like to be affected by these abortion bans, both as an individual patient and then also by a physician, or as a physician. So when I came tonight to listen to Ted Cruz and Colin Allred talk about their issues, the number one thing on the ballot for me was abortion. And I was really disappointed to hear that Ted Cruz had absolutely nothing to say about abortion. He never answered a single question clearly about abortion, and I still feel like his abortion bans have put me, my whole family, other Texans, and all my patients at risk, whereas Colin shared stories about what's going on with Texas women and with families. He shared stories like mine, like Amanda's, and like Kate's, and I know and feel that he is going to take care of us. So there's a striking difference between the two candidates, and I just never got a clear answer from Ted Cruz. I think he's frankly just afraid to admit all the harm that he has done with his abortion bans.
You're surprised Ted Cruz does not have an opinion about something?
Well, I'm not that surprised. I think he's very afraid to talk about abortion because we know that Texans support abortion and support reproductive freedom. But Ted Cruz has created a state where we have some of the most cruel, horrific abortion bans out of any other state in the country, and it's because of him.
Anybody else?
Yes, Congressman Fletcher, you know, some LGBT advocates are frustrated by Allred adopting Cruz's framework in his ad where he said, I'm against boys playing girls sports. Is it the position of, Moderator yourself or even the Democratic Party that trans girls are in fact boys playing against girls?
Well, I think to answer your question, I'm here to talk about what I saw tonight, and I do think that the congressman's answers speak for themselves. I think what we're seeing is Ted Cruz trying to divide Americans, trying to divide the community, and I think that what what we are seeing and what we are talking about in terms of this response is that Ted Cruz is talking about something that isn't what people are talking about, right? He's taking the Equality Act that says that people are equal and says it's about something else. We've been through these fights in Texas before with the bathroom bill, with other things, trying to say that supporting equality of all Texans is something it's not. And I think that's what the response was that I understood. And I think that his response does explain that Ted Cruz is lying about the issue and trying to turn us against each other, and that's not okay, and that's not what Colin Allred will do as our senator. He'll bring us together, and he will protect and support and work for all Texans.
All right, y'all, I'm getting to wrap it up from the Techno folks because we got to give the room to Ted Cruz. Thank y'all so much for your time. We appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so we just were taking you live to the spin room. Some folks may want to know exactly what the spin room is. That's an area that we have set up. It's separate from the studio where we hosted the debate. And this is where people it could be the candidates who come down and they answer questions from the media, or it could be, like you just saw, what we call surrogates. And those are people that are sort of campaigning with the congressman or the senator. So just to recap, we played you a little bit from Tarrant County Judge Glenn Whitley and also from Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher. She's a Democrat from Houston, and also Dr. Austin Denard. That is a woman who has been faced with complications in a pregnancy and traveled out of state in order to get care. Those three are surrogates of the Allred campaign. So just kind of did some housekeeping there so the folks know sort of where we are. We were talking about Glenn Whitley before we dipped away. We've just heard now from two more of the surrogates. Any thoughts on what you heard?
I thought that the physician brought to my mind one of the unintended consequences of the draconian abortion bans in Texas is that OBGYNs are dropping out of their obstetrics practice. More and more of them are not doing that anymore because they're afraid they will go to jail. There is soon going to be a shortage, if there not already is, of obstetrics specialists in this state because doctors are afraid they will go to jail. I mean, as we've heard, they will tell these women, I can't treat you until you are bleeding to death. They sent one woman home with a towel and a bucket in her car. I mean, that is horrifying. We have the city of Amarillo, who actually considered a city ordinance to not allow people to drive through Amarillo on their way out of state to get an abortion. Now, how they were going to enforce that, I'm not sure. We're going to do pregnancy tests at the city limits. I don't know. But those are the kinds of things that women are seeing as drastic attacks on their freedom and liberty and bodily autonomy.
And it's interesting because that was clearly a very fiery discussion during the debate between two men. And then you see the surrogates that came to talk about it, and that was two women down in the spin room.
Well, and so the three surrogates, and I want to see the Republican surrogates and see who we have from Senator Cruz. But these three, Glenn Whitley came back and talked about government and working together and bipartisanship, and then you have a surrogate speaking about LGBT equality and a surrogate speaking about abortion. Obviously, abortion is a linchpin of the Democratic campaign, both nationally and statewide. But if you go back and look at the hobby survey that just came out, the hobby survey showed that only
this is a poll that came out today.
This is a poll that came out today.
From the Hobby School of Government.
Right, Hobby School of Government showed that only, I have the numbers here, I've misplaced them, but only I think 7% of voters said that abortion was a major issue to them. Only 27% said it was among their top three issues. Only like 37% of people who said they're going to vote for Kamala Harris said that abortion was among their top three issues. So abortion was not really selling in Texas. And so this is one of the complications facing Democrats in this campaign, is that they're basing it around abortion, but abortion is not really top of mind for voters.
We played you the exchange from the question that had to do with abortion. We played you part of the exchange that from the question that had to do with transgender rights. As we're sort of queuing up some of our other video, I do want to read a couple of statements that have come in, campaign related, just talking about who won. And you can imagine who says what. The Texas Democratic Party said tonight Texans saw a clear contrast between Congressman Colin Allred, who is ready to be senator for all 30 million Texans, and Ted Cruz, who repeatedly shows he only cares about himself. It goes on to talk about how Ted Cruz has been in Washington forever. Talks about the abortion ban. It also talks about Cancun. Okay, remember that because I want to come back to that issue. From the Cruz campaign directly, though, here is the quote from a Cruz campaign spokesperson. The only thing that is surprising from the outcome of this debate is that Colin Allred's pants didn't catch on fire from the amount of lying he did on stage. Senator Cruz laid out his record, which has brought countless jobs to Texas, supported law enforcement, protected children, and more. When Colin wasn't lying, he was dodging questions and throwing meaningless attacks. The winner of this debate is clear. Okay. Clearly inflammatory language, which we're not surprised. We would expect to hear that from the parties themselves. Let's talk about the Cancun situation, because I think I counted at least 3, maybe 4 mentions of Cancun from Congressman Colin Allred. If you're new to Texas and you don't know the story, it was in 2021. It was Valentine's week, February of 2021. Texas faced a terrible freeze, maybe the worst in our history. Millions of Texans lost power. Unfortunately, hundreds of people died in their homes because it got so cold. And Ted Cruz was seen on a plane going to Cancun, and he left the state and was in Cancun with his family for a couple of days. He's addressed the issue. He says it was, being with his family, being with his girls. But I did think it's interesting that Colin Allred brought that up in the opening statement, I believe.
I think within the first 30 seconds he brought that up and kept circling back to it. Of course, the reason is because if you look on, not everybody may know, but Google has this page called Google Trends, where you can see what words are most associated with other people. And I believe the first or second word most associated.
I actually am going to interrupt you, and I apologize for that.
You know
but
better.
No, it's just that we're flying by the seat of our pants. The spin room is going again,
okay.
And so we want to get down there live. So let's take that live picture of the spin room. Remember where we were? We were talking about Google Trends.
Okay.
And tonight, when the congressman was pressed on his record, time and time again, he refused to answer the question. Whether it be on his past comments about the border wall, whether it be about boys and girls sports, whether it be about the letter he signed just weeks ago promoting drag shows and gender transition surgeries for minors in the military, whether it be the electrical vehicle mandate or LNG gas ban, he could not answer his record because he doesn't have a record to run on. Senator Cruz, on the other hand, pushed forward a positive vision for the state of Texas, talked about jobs, talked about a record of bringing jobs over the past 12 years to the state of Texas. With that, I'll take any questions.
Yeah. I have a question. The topic of abortion came up a lot tonight.
Yeah.
And I know that's a pretty big issue for female voters. Texas is one of the strictest in the country with no exception for rape or incest. And from what I heard tonight, Cruz doesn't have any decisions to alter that of the Texas abortion laws. So why should Texas women trust Cruz and to use his rhetoric to be their protector? Why should Texas women vote for Cruz?
I think Senator Cruz answered that question tonight. I think time and time again, he stands in the gap and protects the folks of Texas. He fights for Texans, and he's fighting every single day to keep Texas, Texas.
This was a question where the moderator came back twice to try to get Cruz to specifically say whether he supported an exception for rape or incest, and Cruz seemed annoyed by it and said, "Why do you keep asking me about that?" What did you make of that exchange? Do you think that was potentially damaging for Cruz?
No, I don't think he was annoyed the whole night. I thought the congressman was annoyed from the jump. I don't know if you all saw the split screen we saw, but he was frustrated from the get-go. He didn't want to answer his record because he has a terrible record on every single issue that matters to the people of Texas. Congressman Allred has stood with Kamala Harris, and he's on the other side of it.
Much of this campaign for the senator has been an attempted rebrand as bipartisan lawmaker. That's not really the brand that we've known him for the last 12 years, at least in popular discourse.
Yeah.
How do you prove that?
Well, I don't think it's been a rebrand at all. I think the senator has always been who he is, and he's always fought for the people of Texas. And when he has to stand in the gap and fight against bad policies, he's going to stand in the gap and fight against bad policies. And when he can push through good policies, he will. So the senator has 12 elected Democrats that have endorsed his campaign, including Kim Ogg, who we talked about tonight. He has, with the recent FAA bill as the chairman of the Commerce Committee, he had a huge win for the city of San Antonio, getting a direct flight to DCA, a fight that they've pushed on for almost 20 years. The senator got it done. Bridges to and from Mexico. Democrats across South Texas are standing with his campaign because he fights for them. And so I don't think it's a rebrand. When something's bad for Texas, he's going to fight against it. When something's good for Texas, he's going to stand with it and make sure it gets done.
Governor Abbott and Senator Cornyn have won re-election rather easily. Senator Cruz finds himself in yet again another tight race in a reliably Republican state. What is it about Ted Cruz that puts him in these situations?
Well, I mean, I think the senator is a fighter, and he's unique, and he's, outside of Donald Trump, he's the #1 target for Democrats across this country. Colin Allred has raised $30 million, and he's barely campaigned this last quarter. That's no accident. That's not because of Colin Allred. That's because of Ted Cruz. And national Democrats don't like Ted Cruz because he fights every single day for what the people of Texas believe in. And so we feel good about where the race is, and we feel even better after tonight.
This is a very competitive race, and I'm just wondering, do you think that Senator Cruz was able to widen the margin tonight? It's about 4.6 percentage points if you look at the latest 6 polls. And if you think that, why and how, on what issue?
I think on every issue. Yeah, I'm going to, because if I was Congressman Allred's team, I wish I had a time machine to go back and not agree to this. He got his tail kicked tonight up and down the debate. From the get-go, he was rattled, he was shaken, and he couldn't answer on his record. So again, whether it's the border, whether it's boys and girls sports, whether it's drag shows in the military, whether it's electrical vehicle mandates that would ban 2/3 of gas-powered cars in Texas in 2032, whether it's his vote to ban LNG exports. These things matter to the people of Texas, and Colin Allred is wrong in every single one of them. And we saw that tonight. Congressman Allred had a chance to defend those votes. He couldn't do it because there is no defense for those votes. They're out of line of the mainstream, and he stands shoulder to shoulder with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I'll do one more.
How close do y'all see this race, and do you see as a realistic possibility that Allred wins? If so, what steps are you going forward?
We feel really good about this race, but like across the country, these races are competitive. The congressman's raised a lot of money, but again, I'll just reiterate one more time. We had a great night tonight. If this was a high school football game, they would put on a running clock. So the congressman has some work to do after tonight, and we feel good. And the senator tonight is driving to, I believe, Wichita Falls to continue his bus tour, and he's going to have about 50 more stops from now until Election Day. And so we're excited to bring our message to the people of Texas and go win this race. Thank you all.
Room. That's not a separate room.
Okay, so you have been watching the surrogate for the Ted Cruz campaign. Earlier we brought you live the surrogates for Congressman Colin Allred, and that was Sam Cooper, who has been in and out of, I believe, working for Ted Cruz as he's been in office, and I know he also works for Axiom, so he's a political strategist. Bud, you're shaking your head.
Going from Ted Cruz to Sam Cooper is like going from Tony the Tiger to a meek little kitty cat of some kind. It's like I would imagine that is probably the last time Sam Cooper will make an appearance as a spokesperson.
Definitely not as fiery. Definitely doesn't
some
have
of the things he
same
said.
sort of
I mean, he said a lot of things that are true, and he said a lot of things that were very strongly in favor of Ted Cruz, but he didn't say them in a very convincing way.
Right.
And he I mean, my gosh, I think. I think Ted ought to leave him and not take him to Wichita Falls.
Yeah, that's the next place that Ted Cruz is headed. All right, so just to reset the stage for you, the Texas debate went from 7 p.m. until 8 p.m. We are going through some of the fiery moments from the debate. I'm Teresa Woodard from WFAA up here in Dallas, alongside Bud Kennedy, who's a columnist for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and Katie Sherrod, who's a former political Sherrod. I said it right almost every time, Katie, and I caught myself that time. Many apologies. Katie Sherrod, who's a former political columnist and a current political commentator. Okay, so when we went to the spin room the last time, we had just started talking about the Cancun issue. And Bud, you were talking a little bit about Google Trends and things like that.
I was just trying to say, a lot of people are familiar with Google search line, but if you look at, there's a website called Google Trends, and they'll show you which words are closely associated with other words, and then where those searches are made. And I believe that the top or second most common word searched with Cruz is Cancun, and so it's the word that has stuck in everybody's mind that people want to know what happened there. Tell me about it. Show me that picture again. What happened? And so it's something obviously that Colin Allred circled back to several times. People remember that Cruz went to Cancun. They don't remember his description of why and how, and they remember that the picture of the dog peering out the window looking sad.
It is a viral photo.
As it turned out, the security guard looked after the dog, and the dog was not in danger in any way. But it was all, I mean, let's face it, a lot of what's said about Cancun is just a really big laugh at the senator's expense.
Well, but the optics of the time were really, really bad. People at home freezing to death, you know, pipes bursting, houses being flooded, and seeing their senator off to where it was warm and nice, and then coming back and throwing his daughters under the bus and saying he had to go because of them.
If I'm
People
not mistaken,
do remember that.
People do remember. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think Ted Cruz addressed that. I think Colin Allred brought it up several times, but I don't think he responded to that tonight, right?
But the fact that it was this sense that he was deserting the people of Texas. And now, what could he have done? I don't know exactly. He couldn't go out and fix the grid, but showing solidarity, going to places where people were doing work to try to fix some of these broken pipes and things, showing up for the people of Texas would have been a nice thing at a time when hundreds of Texans were dying.
He has a list of disaster scenes where he has been and done physical work and helped nail boards and do load sandbags and everything else.
None of them have caught on, have they?
and those pictures haven't caught on. But he has been, as senator, he's been to so many places and helped so many people, and he has a list of where he's been, doing all this kind of work in a similar situation.
And I do remember when he came back, he was certainly in those lines trying to hand out food to people and do things like that. So it was definitely a quick pivot to try to take attention away from. But as we all three agree, that those photos and the video of him walking through the airport is something that I think will always be. Like you said, Cancun Cruz is always something.
And then he did suggest passing a bill to make it illegal to the members of Congress needed security as they traveled.
Oh, that's right.
So that people couldn't take pictures of it.
Yeah, and it is interesting, Katie, you just kind of answered this, but I did say earlier, and I just want to reiterate that, if you have some questions about what you saw or didn't see, or you've got a question that you just don't quite understand why they said something, send us a DM, Facebook and Instagram, and we can try to clarify it for you. Or there's also I shouldn't say a tweet, a post on X that is pinned to the top of our page, and you can respond to that. And it's interesting because somebody with the handle Dan7894 posted on X and actually asked us what Ted Cruz could have done about the electricity failure from a few years ago. And I think your answer is right on, Katie. A senator can't fix the grid by any means, but just the optics of what happened.
Showing solidarity.
And I know, the viewers in Houston know there are heart-rending emergencies in Houston every day.
Yeah.
And there's so many times that he has been in the middle of it helping.
Okay, well, let's kind of reset a little bit, and I think we probably have some other clips that are ready for us to listen to. Maybe we can just go back to the beginning and maybe bring up the opening statements that both of them made. We can listen to sort of how they set the tone to get this whole thing started, and then we can discuss it on the other side. Are the opening statements ready, Jay, Saki? They are ready. Okay, let's go there.
I'm Colin Allred. I'm a fourth-generation Texan. I'm a husband and a father. I was raised here in Dallas by a single mom who's a public school teacher, and I've been shaped by every part of this state. My grandfather was a customs officer in Brownsville. That's where my mom and Nat were born and raised, where I spent a lot of my childhood. I was captain of the Baylor football team in Waco, trained for the NFL draft in Houston, and I've served my hometown in Dallas in Congress for the last 6 years. In that time, I've been the most bipartisan Texan in Congress. I'm the exact opposite of Senator Cruz, who's the most extreme senator in the United States Senate, maybe the most extreme in the last 30 years. But that's not enough. He's also only focused on himself. That's how you can go to Cancun when millions of Texans need you and hundreds are dying. The truth is, we don't have to be embarrassed by our senator. We can get a new one. That's what this election is all about. That's what I'm asking Texans to give me a chance to do.
Texas is an incredible place. I'm the son of an immigrant who came from Cuba with nothing, penniless. washed dishes making 50 cents an hour, but came to Texas to seek out the American dream. And Colin Allred is the son of a single mom who became a football star. He went on to Baylor, went on to the NFL. Now he's a United States congressman. It is incredible that both Congressman Allred and I have the great privilege of representing the people of Texas in the United States Congress. Tonight, I'm going to ask you to listen very carefully to the difference between words and actions. Colin Allred is going to try to say an awful lot of words that sound reasonable. But what he's not going to talk about is his own record or my record. And I'm over and over again going to take us back to actual records, his record and my record. We're doing an awful lot right in the state of Texas. Colin Allred wants to change that. I want to keep Texas, Texas.
So that's how they opened. That's how they sort of set the stage for what they were going to do for the rest of the 60 minutes. Any thoughts, Katie, on exactly sort of how the two of them set the stage at the beginning?
Well, his saying that we want to focus on the difference between words and actions, I thought was interesting, because prior to this, I went back and looked at Cruz's record in Congress of actually getting things passed into law. And he has been there nearly 12 years, and he has passed 9 bills into law. That's it, 9 in 12 years. So he talks a lot. He has voted against many things. He has passed some resolutions. I think 3 or 4 of those 9 bills that were passed into law had to do with naming streets and plazas for various people. So what he has actually done for the people of Texas is very, very limited, I think.
I think he himself, in an interview with Jason Whiteley leading up to this, said something about passing 100 pieces of legislation.
I find that astonishing.
I thought Senator Cruz followed through on his promise. He laid out an introduction of what he was about to say and talk about the difference in words and actions. He kept listing the website over and over again that gave supporting data. He said he's going to track back to his record and to Colin Allred's record. And I thought that he laid out kind of he set the stage for what he was, how he was about to answer every question by saying, "Look at this website."
Okay, we have to just mention the website too. What was it? Allred Facts.
AllredFacts.com.
So according to my colleagues who have been trying to get on that website, it hasn't worked. Now, I don't know if there's something wrong with the website or what exactly the problem was. We also have had an email from someone who said, I actually bought the domain and that is not going to be your property, Ted Cruz, or I don't know. But the bottom line is, colleagues have tried to get onto that website several times and they're telling me it hasn't worked. I have not had a chance to do that as we've been discussing, but they're telling me that that website's not working. So sorry to interrupt you.
Well, I mean, Ted certainly gave it some good plugs.
He did.
He certainly did.
Maybe it's overloaded with people who want to go on there and see.
Go out and find out more about it. But he said from the very beginning he was going to list all of Colin Allred's record. And of course, the fact of the matter is, in an event like this, I mean, what can both candidates say compare? There's very little actually about their record and what either one says. Both of them are trying to avoid answering questions about the record. So, but he did set it up. Allred set up the tone of what he was going to say, which was going to be that Ted Cruz has abandoned the state and that he is the one who's there to stand up for everybody. So Colin Allred set the tone very well for what he would say, and Ted Cruz basically opened the book and said, here's what I'm about to unload.
So I just heard in my ear, did you say that Allred Facts is working now?
Okay.
Is that what? Okay, so we just checked and it is working. I know at one point during the debate that was not working. Okay. So, but now it is working. So if anybody wants to go out there and check it out, feel free. Okay. So
no, stay on WFAA.
Well, you can still watch WFAA Plus while you go to another website on your laptop, most definitely, or on your phone. Okay, so we've watched the exchange with abortion. We have watched the exchange with transgender rights. We have watched their opening statements. I think we want to take us now to the discussion about the border, because I know that got a little fiery as well. That was very near the top of the debate. So if we have the exchange about border and immigration, okay, let's go for it.
And understand at home, Colin Allred is Kamala Harris. Their records are the same. I've served with both of them. They voted in favor of open borders over and over and over again, and now they are desperately trying to hide that from the voters.
What I've always said is that we have to make sure that as we're talking about border security, that we don't fall into demonizing. And you can take something out of context from 7 years ago, which is what he's trying to do. But he doesn't want to talk about what he said this year, which is that we don't need a border bill. So I have a simple question for you.
Sure.
The $20 billion for 1,000 new Border Patrol agents, for 100 new immigration judges, for 4,000 asylum personnel, to help us have technology to catch fentanyl coming across the border. Why did you not support that, Senator?
It's a great question. Can I take his time and
No,
answer?
no, you can't have my time.
Well,
but
he
what I'm
asked me a
saying,
question, you don't
no,
want me to answer.
you can jump in after me. Yeah, that's fine.
Let him finish his
More than
time.
happy to answer
This is not the United States. I'm not yielding my time. It's fine. It's fine.
Don't ask me
engage
questions.
each other.
No, I'm
like,
going to ask you a question. You can answer when you have time.
Gentlemen,
Well, Congressman Allred has memorized his lines well. I will say this, though. He asked, what have you done? We produced the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years, working hand in hand with President Trump. He didn't address that. He also didn't address the fact that it didn't take a bill for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Colin Allred to break the border. It took a president refusing to enforce the law.
I think my question before the debate about whether these two men like each other has been answered. I didn't get the feeling
really
that they're really fond of one another, especially not in that exchange. What do we take away from that? Katie, we'll start with you. What do you take away from the way that discussion went down?
Well, I think, first of all, it needs to be said that the Democrats do not support open borders, nor have they ever.
And that's definitely the talking point.
The talking point. They have never supported open borders, and under the Biden administration, the numbers have dropped precipitously. That was not addressed. The constant tying of Allred to Kamala.
Yeah, that was
Harris,
very blatant at the beginning.
Very
of
blatant
that answer we
and
just
very
showed.
much. Although I think it's interesting and understandable that Allred did not do the same with Trump and Cruz, because I think that would be helpful to Cruz if he did it with many voters in this state. But it's so interesting to me that Ted Cruz, the son of an immigrant, has picked this issue of immigration as one around which to demonize people. And he's done it again and again and again, holding up examples of immigrants who have committed crimes and hammering that home. And I just find the sort of hypocrisy in that a little astonishing.
The fact of the matter is that this is a question, the border is a question that Ted Cruz boils down to simple black and white. He says over and over in his speeches, legal good, illegal bad, and that's how he views the issue. It's an easy question to answer for him. This was one of his strongest moments in the debate because he has an answer that he can deliver clearly. Colin Allred has to use weaker language. That Ted Cruz says you attacked a wall, you called it racist. Colin Allred says, well, I support some sort of barrier without really describing what he wants. He used the word barrier without telling us what he meant. He accused them of demonizing the people that cross the border. But who's he for? Who's he against? What kind of wall does he want? We didn't learn the specifics from Colin Allred because it's a tough question to answer with the kind of nuanced view that Colin Allred takes. When you have a nuanced view of immigration,
nuance is hard in a debate, isn't it?
You can't do that.
And when you know what is going on along the border, which he does, he's grown up there. He spent summers there with his grandparents.
And he knows that good and bad are hard to define.
And he knows that the wall has caused significant problems in the places where it has been built. Environmental problems, all sorts. So, like you say, nuances are not easily delivered during a debate.
No,
like
not at all. Not with 90, 90, 60, and right.
This was going to be a slam dunk question for Ted Cruz, and he
and it was going in.
Yeah.
And do you think that there was any surprise at all in Allred trying to, ask him that question, saying, why didn't you support this bill? And then, Cruz saying, oh, I'll take the time and I'll go ahead and answer it now. Is that, did that show anything personality-wise between the two of them?
I think it just showed that Allred was trying to ask something rhetorically, and Cruz was trying to be jocular and say, well, sure, come on, let's talk.
Yeah.
If you give Ted a minute, he'll take it.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so just to reset for everyone, it's 8:52. The debate ended about an hour, less than an hour ago. I'm Teresa Woodard from WFAA up here in Dallas. We've got Bud Kennedy and Katie Sherrod. I got it right this time,
You
Katie. Who are sort of helping us parse through what we saw and have a better understanding of what was said, what wasn't said, what were some wins and what were some misses as well. At the top of the hour, I think we're going to bring in, or somewhere near the top of the hour, we're going to bring in Jason Whiteley and Gromer Jeffers, who moderated the debate tonight. And as I said, sort of try to get a little bit of insight from them on what they saw that maybe we couldn't see while we were sitting here. We saw handshakes before and after between the two candidates. And so I always like to see that. I feel like that's a moment where at least it shows we can disagree, but we can still shake hands at the end of the day.
You know, what we didn't see this time, pardon me, Teresa, was in the debate against Beto at the end, if you remember, the last question was, say something good about your opponent. And Beto O'Rourke said, he's a good family man, he loves his kids. And Ted Cruz's answer was, well, he's very strong on his issues of big government and higher taxes.
Yeah,
it's like,
and I think Beto's final word was true to form.
Yeah, exactly.
And that started trending for quite a while.
We didn't see anything at that level.
Right, we did not. And I think, you know, if I had to guess with the moderators, there was a lot of things that they had to leave on the table because there was a lot of extra discussion that kind of ran over.
The moderators, before they get here, the moderators really had to push the accelerator.
They did,
and obviously, it's tough to keep Cruz in line, and at times it was tough to keep Allred pushing forward.
I think it is interesting, though, that Heidi Cruz is not here, or was not here.
That we know of. We
didn't
see her in the video.
We did not see her. She was not visible. Because one of the things that comes up again and again and again is if you go back to when Cruz was running for president and the things she said about Donald Trump and then immediately flipped, one of the things Trump was doing was insulting Cruz's wife. And for a lot of Texans, it's been hard to handle the fact that he was willing to overlook that and become such a Trump supporter.
That's an interesting point, and I do think that's something that definitely resonates with people. I still hear people talking about that to this day.
She may have been at work, Katie.
You never know. We don't know, or she may have been here. We may just not have had a picture of her.
I'm just saying she wasn't visibly here.
Right. So okay, we've talked through several of the topics. I think next, if I'm not mistaken, we do have some of the exchange that had to do with January 6th. Am I right, Jay? Do we have that ready to go? We do have that ready to go. Okay, so let's do the same as we've been doing. Let's take a listen to that discussion from January 6th, and then we'll pick it apart when we come back.
I know where I was, and I know where he was. I remember when they told us to reach under our seats for these gas masks. I didn't know we had, because they had deployed tear gas in the rotunda. The officers locked all the doors. We barred the doors the president walks through to deliver the State of the Union with furniture that we usually use to hold paper. And I texted my wife, Allie, who was 7 months pregnant with our son, Cameron, and at home with our son, Jordan, who wasn't yet 2. Whatever happens, I love you. And I took off my suit jacket, and I was prepared to defend the House floor from the mob. At the same time, after he'd gone around the country lying about the election, after he'd been the architect of the attempt to overthrow that election, when that mob came, Senator Cruz was hiding in a supply closet. And that's okay. I don't want him to get hurt by the mob. I really don't. This election is his accountability.
So look, I think the Biden-Harris administration has persecuted some engaged in peaceful speech, and if you are being persecuted for peaceful speech, absolutely you should be pardoned. If you engaged in violence, absolutely not, you should not be pardoned. But let me say something interesting. You know, the far left, they're so angry right now. There's so much hatred. You know, Congressman Allred just snarled at me, "You're a threat to democracy." Now, let me be clear. I don't know Congressman Allred. I have no animus for him personally. But I do know his voting record. His voting record is radical and extreme. And you want to talk about threats to democracy? Let's take a vote that just happened a few weeks ago on the floor of the House, the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act provided that in order to register to vote, you got to prove you're an American citizen. Congressman Allred voted no. 11.5 million illegal immigrants have come into this country under Kamala Harris and Colin Allred's open border policies, and Congressman Allred votes no to protecting our elections and ensuring that people don't vote illegally. That is a threat to democracy.
Okay. got a little technical issue that we're going to work through. I know, Bud, you're having some audio issues. Go ahead and come on in, Ryan, if you want to. Here's the famous Ryan, everybody. If you've watched our YouTube streams before from coverage whenever we were covering the Attorney General's impeachment trial, this is the famous Ryan. So as he's changing out the battery,
Battery specialist.
I thought this was an interesting exchange because I thought it was very fiery. Katie, you could hear it, right? You could hear them talking.
I could hear it, and I think that Allred prevailed significantly.
It's a
in this
difficult thing
exchange.
for Ted Cruz to talk about, I would think.
I would think absolutely, and I don't think, I mean, he pivoted to try to talk about the SAFE Act and things like that, but I think this was clearly a case in this debate where Allred prevailed.
Just reading the Twitter responses, I mean, people thought that this was Allred's finest moment, that his comments quoting the text message and all that. People seem to have really, and a lot of them didn't know the story about his text message to his wife and all this. And so a lot of people really seem to have been stunned by that.
Do you think that that shows, if that's something that resonated, he got real personal there? Do you think that that shows that that still to this day can connect with people when you sort of reveal, you pull back a little bit of the politician and you just become the husband or the dad in a debate?
I think that coupled with the emotional impact of that day on Americans who were watching it. I mean, I think many Americans still have PTSD from watching that attack on their capital that day. And the horror of that moment of watching a mob breaking in to America's sacred ground, as it were. And I think hearing that one personal story of someone who was in that room who thought he might not live to come out of it was a very powerful moment.
I feel like it's been a long time and it's faded from a lot of voters' minds. I don't see it high on lists of issues or topics that voters are concerned about. I just think too much time has passed and there's too much other baloney under the bridge, or whatever you want to say. But I don't think that it is something that plays well in the Democrats' campaign.
What does it say that January 6th maybe isn't playing as well, and the abortion, as you said earlier, is not resonating, but the transgender issue, that seems to be resonating? Can you take anything away from that?
I think that the good old social issues are the go-to, and that's what candidates use, that's what campaigns use to inflame people instead of policy issues. And abortion is not usable anymore as a social issue because it essentially has been decided in the minds of a lot of people. LGBT is the new issue that conservatives would like to see go to the Supreme Court and be decided. So that is the new issue that's used to motivate voters. And we look at the social issues, the battle over moral causes, whatever. It's all arguments to motivate voters on either side.
I think only a man would be able to say that abortion is not an issue that's motivating voters.
Well,
I think I would almost guarantee.
You're hearing it differently.
I can show you the women in the poll.
I think the polls are almost useless these days. Yeah. I think there have been too many new ways people are exchanging information. I think we have too many first-time registered voters. I think we have too many Gen Z who are coming up, who are for the first time fired up about politics, that I think polls are not the best way to read these things. And what I'm hearing is that among women, abortion is indeed a motivating factor. Women, and particularly young women, because they still cannot believe that a constitutional right was taken away from them.
But young women do not have a history of being good voters.
But see, that's now that they are registering to vote, that may change.
I will say that I am as amazed as you might be that the polls show that. That it's not as big of an issue.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do next. We're going to have Katie and Bud be able to take a breath and take a drink and recenter yourself for a couple of minutes. We're going to use your microphones on Jason and Gromer and bring them in and have a little bit of a discussion. As we get reset here, we're going to play for you right now the closing statements from both Congressman Colin Allred and Senator Ted Cruz.
it feels like the time has flown here in the studio tonight. I hope our viewers have gotten something out of this, but it's now time to make your final pitch to voters for your closing statements. Congressman Allred, you won the coin toss tonight. You chose to go first. Sure. You get 60 seconds, sir.
Sure. Well, I want to thank you all for moderating. You did an excellent job. I want to thank Senator Cruz for a spirited debate. Listen, we're all Texans. My idol, John Lewis, used to say that we might have come here on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. We're all Americans, and we're all Texans. We need a leader who will bring us together around our shared values. That's what I've tried to do in my 6 years in Congress. That's the exact opposite of what Senator Cruz has done. Whatever he says tonight, you've seen it for 12 years. He's been one of the most divisive senators in the entire country. If you don't like how things are going in Washington right now, well, you know what? He is singularly responsible for it. He has introduced this new kind of angertainment where you just get people upset and then you podcast about it and you write a book about it and you make some money on it. But you're not actually there when people need you. Like when the lights went out, when 30 million Texans were relying on a senator to spring into action. He went to Cancun. That's who he is. If you give me the chance to be your United States Senator, I'll never abandon you. And I'm asking for your vote and for your support in this election.
Congressman, thank you. Senator Cruz, you get the final word tonight. You have 60 seconds.
The stakes in this election are the highest of my lifetime. Congressman Allred and Kamala Harris are both running on the same radical agenda. Congressman Allred has pledged to be the 50th vote for Chuck Schumer to end the filibuster, to end the requirement of 60 votes to pass major legislation. That means if Congressman Allred is elected, we will see the Democrats, number one, strike down every voter integrity law in the country. Number two, add D.C. and Puerto Rico as states to give them 4 new Democrat senators. Number three, grant immediate voting rights to every illegal alien in America. That would turn Texas blue, and every statewide elected official in Texas would be defeated in the next election. And number four, pack the U.S. Supreme Court. That would jeopardize our fundamental rights. I've spent 12 years fighting every single day to defend jobs and freedom and security. Congressman Allred wants to destroy what we've got in Texas because he shares Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris's value.
Senator,
I will fight to keep Texas.
Senator, that is your time tonight.
All right, everybody. That was the closing statement from both Senator Ted Cruz and Congressman Colin Allred. Now we have the gentleman of the hour with us here on WFAA Plus. Grover Jeffers from the Dallas Morning News beside me, and WFAA's senior political reporter Jason Whiteley. You moderated this thing. We have been talking, Bud and Katie and I, for the last hour about the fact that it was fiery. Bud even said he was going to start looking for the fire extinguisher up here and bring it down to you guys. But we just want to spend a little bit of time picking your brain and hearing what your greatest takeaways were. Maybe, Jason, we'll start with you. Peel back the layer. We could see the handshake before. We could see the handshake afterward. What could you see that we could not see?
You know, listen, at the end of the day, I think it was respectful from both sides, but these guys did not hold back. Everyone knows Ted Cruz is a skilled debater. That's established. People probably expected Cruz to come in here, gloves on, maybe taking them off, but I did not expect the street brawl that I think it turned into. Colin Allred, I think, performed better than I expected. Okay. I don't know what I expected him to perform like, but I'm surprised that he delivered a number of one-liners. The January 6th question that Gromer had, Allred said, you know, listen, this is not funny. This is not funny.
Yeah, he did.
You're a threat to democracy. Allred had another line near the end about, I think in his closing statement, about angertainment.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that before. Allred was clearly prepared for this tonight, and I think it easily showed. Now, the question everyone, I think, wants to know after debates like this is, okay, who won? Who won?
I know. I just got a text from a friend of all of ours asking me who won.
Yeah. Well, I think it's obvious. The last thing I'll say, Gromer, because Gromer has a tremendous amount of experience in these. But I think it was a tie. I think at the end of the day, it was a tie. Both men performed very well.
Yeah, I think if your base, if you like Colin Allred, you're coming away from this.
Then you love him after
tonight. You're like, oh my God.
Right. And vice versa.
Yeah, because we knew that it would be tough, and I kind of figured it would be a brawl. And quite frankly, we all talked about that during rehearsal. And thanks by the way, for helping us prepare. It was terrific. I mean,
it's a lot of fun helping you guys get ready.
Yeah,
and I think we threw you guys some punches during rehearsals that actually happened during the actual
Have you told them yet about rehearsals?
Tell the viewer
Yes.
here, Teresa played Colin Allred for us downstairs.
During our debate rehearsals.
During the debate rehearsals for several days, and one of our political producers, Michael McCardle, played Ted Cruz.
Right.
And Gromer brings it up because these guys clearly prepared us for what to expect.
Right.
It was almost spot on.
Exactly, and I almost chuckled in the beginning because Allred's answer was mirrored your answer so much. I mean,
I just did a lot of research. That's all I did.
And I looked at him, and it wasn't you. It was actually Allred. And I was saying, okay, this is real now. But I think both sides. If you like Cruz, you feel good about his performance as well. But what I would say is, very rarely in a big-time debate has Cruz come across someone who's not only going to punch back, but actually initiate the contact. And that's what happened tonight. So it was fascinating to see both of them go at it, because Allred was on the offensive a lot, but Cruz, he was counterpunching at times. And we rarely see Cruz as the puncher, but he was doing it. And I saw Cruz smile at one point.
Yeah, it looked like he was having fun
exactly.
a couple of times.
After an Allred attack, he smiled at one point, almost like, oh, okay, that was good. And then he went back at it. And so I think it was a fascinating tactical battle. Who won or lost, I'm not sure of that.
Well, if you ask either party, they're going to say they were the winners.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I was also struck by afterwards how, in our conversations, they both acknowledged that it was a worthwhile experience and a tough fight.
Good.
And thanked us for doing it.
So before the debate, I asked Katie Sherrod and Bud Kennedy, our commentators here, if we thought that these guys liked each other. I just said a few minutes ago after we played one of the exchanges about Border or January 6th, one of them, that I think my question was answered. I didn't get the feeling that they came away from that best buds. What was the energy like? Did you feel like there was definitely a feeling that these are not two guys who necessarily want to be best friends?
One thing that struck me was at the very end of the debate, when they were playing the music and we stood up to shake hands.
Right.
The microphones had been cut at that moment. And usually, my experience in the past has been both candidates come over and shake both of our hands, and then we swap candidates and say thanks for coming tonight. We appreciate you participating. Ted Cruz walked over, and Colin Allred started to walk over. And Cruz finished walking over and shook our hands. Allred went back to the lectern and waited.
I noticed that.
Right.
And then Cruz finished, and then Allred walked over. Read into it what you will. I just thought it was interesting because in my previous experience, that's never happened.
Normally
before.
both come towards
Walk
you
over and say
at the same
thank-
time.
thanks
Yeah,
for the-
no,
the-
I
the
did
time.
notice that too, Jason. And I wondered if that meant, what it meant. I noticed he kind of stayed back and he was picking up some things, maybe a note or something.
Maybe he wanted to
didn't want somebody
give
see.
the senator time up there with us just for a second and then have his own moment. I don't know.
And then there were a few seconds left, so the four of us had like a four-way conversation, and that was interesting because they actually, not a whole lot, but sort of had some dialogue with each other. And I thought the handshake was interesting as well.
Yeah.
It seemed genuine.
Yeah.
I think it's not, like I said, two men who will ever be or want to be best friends, but maybe there's a respect there for the fact that you just put yourself through 60 minutes of tough questioning. I know you guys have to get on and get ready for...
Are you rushing us off already?
No,
Teresa?
no, I just want to be mindful of the fact that if you have other things to do.
No, it's
but
fine.
I am, just a couple more questions. Topic-wise, is there anything that you thought was, an absolute, home run for one of them or a swing and a miss for the other? Like, was there anything that resonated with you that you thought topic-wise really was a strong moment or a really weak moment for either one?
I think both campaigns are happy with the topics they expected to do well with and expected to land punches with.
Such as
abortion. I think Colin Allred has to be happy about that exchange. Expecting Ted Cruz not to answer, Jason, your question about your personal views on exceptions for rape and incest to the Texas abortion law. So that exchange, I think Allred is happy with. But I think Cruz is probably happy with the transgender conversation about transgender athletes in women's sports, and maybe Border as well. And so, January 6th, Allred's happy with that. So I think they saw opportunities to maximize their potential in those questions, and they were pretty effective in doing that.
And the tough part about this is we always go into this with a hell of a lot more questions than we have time.
Oh, of course, right.
And we all three worked on this
and
with
leave,
Bud and
you
others.
leave things on the table and you wish you could have asked.
We had 12 or 13 questions ready to go, but we knew we wouldn't get to that many. We got to 10 questions. It was only 60 minutes. If you watch the vice presidential debate, if you watch the presidential debate, they had an hour and a half, almost 2 hours of questions. They hit a lot of things. They had a lot more time to massage topics a little bit here. At the end of the day, I think we had 4 topics that were really lightning rod issues. We played 2 of them off the top, abortion and border, 1 for each, because abortion is an issue that Allred wants to talk about. Border is an issue Cruz wants to talk about. We got into some pocketbook issues, a few other things, foreign policy. Then we come back to 2 more about halfway through, the transgender issue that Cruz is really hitting Allred on. And then we hit the January 6th question. All legitimate questions, all of them that both candidates want to talk about here. But there are also moments, I think, when you structure a debate that will also kind of light the fire. And we kept kind of the fire going. I did not expect the reaction we had from Colin Allred. I knew Ted Cruz. I know both of these men, but I know what Ted Cruz is. I know he's a skilled debater. I know he has command of the facts. But what we saw tonight from Allred was not something I expected. I've been talking to a number of Republicans texting me tonight, and they were saying that Cruz underestimated Allred.
Oh, wow.
Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I'll say this. I'm not all that surprised by it, and I'll tell you why. He's a middle linebacker.
That's true.
And you know, he has to be able to unravel offenses, to read, to anticipate what's going to happen. I think he took a football mentality, athletes or competitors mentality into this debate. He was obviously prepared. And again, the shots he landed were tough shots. I mean, so what could have been a debate where Cruz sort of controlled the action.
It wasn't.
Like it wasn't. It was a debate where they both landed punches. They both were on defense and offense. It was a fascinating tactical debate.
Yeah, you know, just as someone who was listening and watching, Ted Cruz talks loud.
Yeah.
I just thought this is an interesting comparison of 2 very different personalities, because you do have Ted Cruz, who we have seen for years has a very loud voice, and boy does he get animated, and especially in a debate. Colin Allred in an interview, we all know, is very cool, calm, and collected, doesn't really get overly energized and loud in an interview. But when you put him in that debate stage, the energy level went up and he was fiery. And I'm just curious about the people at home, if they take anything away from that, if they feel like, you know, you had one person whose personality and demeanor is always sort of this elevated. Then you have somebody who's a little bit more, come on, man.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that resonates at all.
Well, that's interesting. And keep in mind that maybe most of the viewers, this is their first time seeing Colin Allred,
that's a good
because
point. That's a good
you know,
point.
he's not on television a lot. He hasn't had the rallies, going to 254 counties like Beto O'Rourke did in 2018. So maybe this was
They've
the
seen
first
him on TV though, on the
commercials.
Scripted moments.
Scripted moments,
yeah,
and this is the first time, I bet, that a lot of
them are
folks,
seeing him.
and they're seeing this guy, and you know, oh, okay, that's what he's about. So.
And listen, I think the question moving forward here from what is it, 9:15 is, this was the largest audience that either of these 2 men have had so far, and will have. We were on 25 different stations with this debate.
Across
You
the state of
guys were
Texas
streaming it
and
here
in
on
Louisiana,
WFAA Plus. It was on C-SPAN. It was all over Texas, even Louisiana. Every corner of the state. There's not one market in this state, Lubbock, El Paso, the Panhandle, everywhere had this on. And I think the question now is, does any of this, does Colin Allred's introduction and his performance tonight, does any of this change the debate?
That's a very good
change the
question.
polling, because it was already close. People have their minds made up about Ted Cruz, about Colin Allred. Most of them do about Colin Allred. But Colin Allred really got an opportunity here to introduce himself to that 30% of people who don't have an opinion of him tonight. Did he change any minds? And I don't think we'll know that for a few weeks until we
Well,
get some polling, or
3
until
weeks
the
from
election.
tonight.
Yeah, we'll know who won, right?
Yeah, and I think it'll help his fundraising. He's already been impressive with his fundraising. I think it'll help there. The question is, will it also help with the energy of the campaign?
Right.
Get people fired up, motivated to go out, knock doors, and do whatever you have to do to get people to the polls. If it does that, I think it would have been an endeavor worthwhile for him. Same with Cruz. But, Cruz has that built-in advantage. This is typically a conservative state.
Mm-hmm.
Conservatives dominate the electorate for a half since 1994. And so, he can count on that. But now will Allred be able to, have another well of voters, pool of voters to pull from because of the performance tonight?
I know we'll wrap up here in a second. The one thing I've mentioned it a couple of times tonight during our live stream is the great unknown in Texas right now are the new registered voters.
Yes.
Since the last time that Ted Cruz was on the ballot in 2018, we have 2.6 million new registered voters in the state. He won by 215,000 votes last time. Clearly, that could make a difference. Will they all vote? Again, the great unknown. So I guess that's the final thing I'll ask you. And Jason, you kind of addressed this, but can a debate sway the minds of these people? Do you think that it?
1,000%.
You think it? You think it can?
And I would say, look no further than Joe Biden.
Yeah,
That's a very good point.
Joe Biden defined how debates can change a race instantaneously. I mean, before that presidential debate was even over, you had Democrats online calling for Biden to drop out of the race. One of them, his name slips my mind. Who is it, Bernadine? The state rep from
Lloyd Doggett.
Lloyd Doggett.
No, before him, it was somebody else.
Oh.
It was the guy in Houston,
Ron
a friend of mine, Ron Reynolds.
Yeah.
The chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus.
Yeah, he was.
And he got
the first,
excoriated from other Democrats on that. But I think debates can clearly change it. Now, I don't know if enough happened tonight to change that. Don't get me wrong either. Ted Cruz had a very good night.
Oh,
we expected Ted Cruz to have a good night tonight.
Yeah.
I did not expect Colin Allred to perform as strong as he did tonight. That's why I'm talking a lot about Allred here, because I think his performance was more than I expected. And I know at least some Republicans are telling me that they think that Cruz underestimated Allred as well.
But no one can underestimate Senator Ted Cruz. I mean, he always performs, and you put him in a situation like this, and he's going to hit a home run with practically everything you throw at him. I mean, the man was a champion debater, national champion.
It showed tonight.
Yes,
Yeah, he knows what he's doing up there. And that's why every debate he goes into, if you're an odds maker, you're going to install him as probably the favorite. Now, if there was we're not going to get a rematch, and I think that's too bad, because I would like to see this again.
You want to do this again, man?
Yeah, exactly. I would. Well, we can use the rest of our. I mean, we got plenty of other questions, but you're not going to see it again. But if you were to see it again, I mean, what would the odds be? Who would be the favorite to win? That would be an interesting number that some odds maker would have to, put on, on the race.
Well, in Gromer's dreams, he's doing it again. So Jason,
he's already ready.
Sign you up, huh?
Wow.
I can simply say, as a colleague and as a fellow journalist, I thought you guys did a fantastic job tonight. I know it has been an exhausting few weeks and months to prepare for this, but you guys really did a phenomenal job. I think you represented what the viewers and what the voters needed to hear. You were asking hard questions and holding them to account. You didn't always get an answer, but you tried, and I just want to commend you for, as you said, keeping it respectful, but also letting it get a little fiery. So kudos to you guys.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, thanks for helping us prepare.
And the teamwork,
Teamwork, that's 100%. Right. It makes the dream work. Okay, Jason and Gromer, go have a stiff drink if that's what you want to have. I told everybody earlier maybe that's what y'all were doing between 8 and 9 o'clock when you came out here to join us. I know, I'm just kidding, but get some good rest tonight.
All right.
We're gonna turn your mics off and we're gonna bring Bud and Katie back in. But so just to sort of reset everybody, it's now 9:20. The Texas debate went from 7 p.m. until 8 p.m. Here on WFAA and on WFAA Plus. It was fiery, it was interesting. We touched on an awful lot of topics during those 60 minutes. Continue to send us some of your questions and some of the things that you may want some clarity on here on our YouTube stream, or you could also send it to us through our DMs on our Facebook or on our Instagram. So this is interesting. I just got word that we were running a poll on Instagram, and as Jason and Gromer were talking about, according to our Instagram followers, it was a 50-50 tie on who won the debate. That's exactly what Gromer said, and Jason too. I think everybody sort of agreed that it was home runs for both, and then there was also some moments that both maybe would like to have back. So yeah, again, continue to watch us on WFAA Plus and all of our streaming channels. We're going to bring Bud, Kennedy, and Katie back in as they're getting mic'd up. I'll just set the table a little bit. We're going to go until the top of the hour, so it's now 9:22. Katie and Bud and I will take you until the top of the 10 o'clock hour, and that's when we will dip in and we will bring you WFAA's 10 p.m. broadcast live. And then you'll need to stay tuned because we are re-queuing the debate, and we are going to show you the debate in its entirety right after the top of our 10 o'clock news. So probably around 10:15 or so is when we'll go to that debate and bring it to you again live. If there's something that you're curious about, if you want to rewatch something and you don't want to wait until 10:15, you can stay with us here. But also on our YouTube channel, all of the questions and the answers are they're all queued up and they're ready for you. So you can go there and just sort of pick what you want to watch and get a little bit more clarity. So, okay, quick change. We waved our magic wand and we brought Bud and Katie back in with us. I think you guys were probably listening to Jason and Gromer, or at least looking over, and you could hear a little bit from them. I, again, commended them because I thought they did a fantastic job. Was there anything that Jason or Gromer brought up that you thought was interesting?
I think that, of course, Jason talked about how important debates are, and they both talked about, the impact that a debate could have, and just giving credit to how strong both candidates were and how forceful they both were. You don't usually see debates like this. You and I watch a lot of debates. You don't see debates like this where both candidates come in just completely ready to throw everything out there and just go just incredibly strong the whole time. I think both candidates knew what they wanted to say. They made their points. No matter what the question was, they made their points. But they both came at the camera at 100 miles an hour every minute of that debate.
They both connected very well, I thought.
And I give the moderators credit for also, they were coming at them 100 miles an hour and they managed to keep them in their lanes pretty well, which is no small feat.
That is
when
true.
you have two strong speakers like that, particularly with Ted Cruz at a volume that would blow your hair back. So yeah, I think there are a lot of factors that went into this. The obvious depth of preparation on the moderators and the depth of preparation on both of the candidates. I do think, I think Cruz was not prepared for the strength that Allred showed all the way through it.
And you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and give a kudos to my station here, WFAA. I thought the production was very high level. I thought it looked very good.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is a local TV station, and resources are not the same as they are in the network level. And I think that what it looked like, in my opinion, which I know, I'm a little biased when it comes to my own station, but I thought it looked really good.
I know both of those moderators, but I thought they did a stronger job of keeping the candidates in their lanes as much as possible than you've seen in many previous national debates.
They could have, either of those, the moderators would have done a better job of handling several of the other national debates we've seen.
That's definitely impressive then. Okay, we have a few more clips that we're going to play and we're going to talk through. I think this next exchange is when we talked about Israel and Hamas, and so let's go ahead and play that, and then Bud and Katie and I will talk about it on the other side.
When I was elected 12 years ago, I resolved then to be the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate. And I've worked every day to do that, to stand up and fight to support Israel. I am proud to stand with Israel. Our position should be that America stands unshakably with Israel. When President Trump was president, I urged him to move our embassy to Jerusalem. He did, and I was there the day we opened the embassy in Jerusalem. And I've never seen such celebration. When President Trump was president, I urged him to pull out of the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. He did, and it was the single most important national security decision of his entire presidency. Congressman Allred has consistently lined up against Israel. At the beginning of the Biden-Harris administration, he urged them to send money to Gaza, even though it would go to Hamas. He has supported Kamala Harris and Joe Biden flowing over $100 billion to Iran. 90% of the funding for Hamas and Hezbollah comes from Iran. I'll tell you, Congressman Allred invited a radical imam here in Dallas who calls Zionists monsters and has compared them to Nazis. Congressman Allred calls them the very best of North Texas. I don't support those who engage in anti-Semitic actions, and I will tell you the funders of the anti-Semitic protest on college campuses are among Congressman Allred's biggest supporters. We need clarity. We need to draw a line, and as for me and my home, we will stand with Israel.
Senator, thank you for that. Congressman, you have 60 seconds.
We have to talk about this because there was a vote. It's not about talking. It's about action. We had a vote in the United States Congress to provide military funding and aid to Israel, to Ukraine, to Taiwan, to address the humanitarian issues in Gaza and around the world. Part of that aid package was $5 billion in the interceptors that were used in the Iron Dome to prevent the Iranian rockets that just rained down on Israel a couple of weeks ago. That happened in spite of Senator Cruz. It was a very illuminating vote because the extremists were the ones who voted against it. The far left voted against it. The far right voted against it. I think there was only 18 senators who voted against it. And Ted Cruz was one of them. So you can't tell me that you support Israel when the rubber meets the road and you're not there.
I think that's a really interesting policy debate between the two, but I also think what's interesting in that exchange was the way that Ted Cruz was tying himself to President Trump and Colin Allred was trying to tie it back to a vote. Katie?
Well, and his full-throated embrace of Israel, not nuanced at all. Later on in that exchange, Allred gave a very nuanced reply to about trying to balance out the support for Israel along with the innocent civilians in Gaza, and talked about how Hamas embeds themselves among those innocent civilians, and that somehow we've got to find a way to support the people of Israel and the people of Gaza. Now, I don't think either of them mentioned the words two-state solution,
right?
But I think that was the undercurrent there. And that was one time, I think, when there was some nuance in the answers in this debate. And it is an unusual one because that is a highly fraught issue.
And this was the only time I think that I heard the word Ukraine used all night, something that's very much an issue in the United States Senate. And Congressman Allred did mention the Iron Dome interceptors. I think Raytheon's involved in that, which is a Texas company.
Right.
I think that those are issues that are very much at the heart of Texans and covered so little ground.
Okay, well, let's move on to another topic and discuss a little bit about this. This was the economy, and we all know that that's something that, of course, resonates with everybody right now. And it's so interesting because all of the economists and the numbers try to point to an economy that's really getting better and that things are on the up and up. But when you look at the polls, as Katie has said, she's not necessarily sure she trusts them. But when you do look at polls of the American people, they don't see the economy in the same way that the economists see the economy right now. And so, okay, let's take a listen to what was discussed regarding the economy. It's coming up. It's coming up.
When it comes to inflation, inflation is caused by the policies of Kamala Harris and Congressman Allred. Kamala Harris and Congressman Allred, they came in and they went on a spending binge. They spent trillions of dollars we didn't have. They borrowed trillions of dollars from China that we didn't have, and they ran the printing presses. And I and many others said, if you do this, you're going to drive up inflation. And they didn't care. And I'll tell you, Texans at home are experiencing it. If you're a senior on fixed income, you're finding it harder and harder to pay your bills. If you're a working couple, just buying your first home, you're discovering a 7% mortgage is very different than a 2.5%. If you're trying to fill your tank with gas, or you're a single mom worried about getting braces for your daughter, the inflation caused by Kamala Harris and Colin Allred's spending binge is hurting Texans across the board.
Well, listen, I agree that that insurance is better handled at the local level and the state level. But let's talk about inflation, because I was raised by a single mom who's a public school teacher in a state where we don't pay our teachers enough. And so I know what it's like to go through the grocery store line and swipe your debit card and just say a little prayer and hope that this week you can afford it. That's why I've been so laser focused on lowering folks' costs, on lowering the cost of your prescription drugs, on your health care, on your child care, on your housing. We thought it was a good idea to cap the cost of insulin for folks on Medicare at $35 a month. I voted for it. Senator Cruz apparently disagreed. We tried to cap it for everyone because 1 in 4 Americans are rationing their insulin. You know what rationing your insulin means? It means you're not taking the medication you need to survive. And so we said, let's make sure that this is affordable. I was willing to do it and voted for it. Senator Cruz voted against it.
They also talked about the child tax credit, and I thought this was not a spot in the debate where they got really fiery with each other. I mean, maybe they blamed each other, but they weren't really raising their voices. I was just told, this is very interesting, that this is the question that is number one on YouTube right now. People are going to this question and viewing this more than any of the other questions. We have each question and answer parsed apart on our YouTube. You can watch each of them individually, and apparently this is the one that is the number one being viewed right now.
World level economists saying that the United States economy is so good right now, it's driving the world's economy. Inflation is dropping, and yet somehow that is not being communicated or absorbed by the American people, which brings up questions about the media. But I also, like the price of gas. I don't know about you, but I've seen the price of gas drop steadily. I have noticed prices going down in my own grocery shopping. Why is that not somehow being absorbed by the public? What is the dynamic that's working there?
Well, I think the fact that it's the number one YouTube view is that this is the issue that's topmost on people's minds. Is why am I having to spend so much money for everything, and why is it costing me so much money? And it's easy to say, well, it's not really costing you so much, but when it costs $27 to go have lunch somewhere, and it does cost you over and over. And the prices that went up during COVID
have not come down.
We have not come down. We were told, when trucking gets back to normal and diesel gets back to normal, these prices will come down. They haven't come back down, and so people are still paying a premium for everything. And of course, the supply gets more and more expensive, and so it trickles throughout the
So if corporations are refusing to lower prices, what does the government do about that?
And that's a question that was asked, and I don't think there's a good answer from either. I mean, Colin Allred talked a little bit about price gouging and things like that, but that's a very good question, Katie.
In retrospect, watching this, I think this was one of Ted Cruz's better moments and better answers. Again, he had the simplest answer, and he had the most aggressive answer. And Colin Allred was forced again to play defense for the current administration. And so I think this was probably one of Ted Cruz's better moments. The people are watching it. They're probably getting a dose of Ted Cruz being direct.
If this is the issue, which I know we've always heard people, at the end of the day, people vote with their wallet. If this is the issue, does Ted Cruz have the advantage? If this is the issue that people are going to actually make their decision on?
No, I don't think that's even a question. I think that is the issue, and that is why Republicans have had an advantage.
And I think perception becomes reality, and unless the Democrats can find ways to communicate that and then to show a program where they will get corporations to seriously start bringing prices back to pre-pandemic levels, it's going to be a hard fight to win.
I want to kind of reset and remind people that, who we are. I'm Teresa Woodard from WFAA up in Dallas. We're with you until the top of the hour, and that's when we will have our WFAA broadcast of our 10 p.m. news recapping the debate. But then at about 10:15 or so, we will replay the entire debate. I've got a feeling that there's going to be a lot of folks who want to go back and watch it again. I mean, it moves so fast when you're in the moment. If you are a casual viewer, maybe you're like, okay, I saw that, I'm done. But if you really are into politics, if you really are into how they performed or what they said about something, you want to watch the whole thing start to finish again. And so we're going to replay that. And if there's some specific question that you want to watch again, that is available on our YouTube channel. We have every single question and every full answer clipped, and those are posted on YouTube right now. Okay. let's stop talking a little bit about debate performance and talk about where the future is. I wrote down
Wichita Falls, I hear.
That's exactly right. That's what I
yeah.
was going to say. That was in the spin room that we heard earlier. So strategy-wise, here's where Ted Cruz goes next. Wichita Falls, Amarillo, Lubbock, Midland, Abilene, Waco, College Station. That's over the course of the next week or so. No surprises there to me.
Very friendly territory.
This is a repeat of 2018. He made this Western bus trip swing, going to every red town. Everywhere west of 35 in Texas is almost solid red. And so so he makes this Western swing and tries to rally the voters and make sure that people turn out and vote. And this is what to watch for on election night. That's why on election night 6 years ago, people were kind of wide-eyed and all these numbers were coming in, and Beto O'Rourke was ahead 600, 800,000 votes. And then all of a sudden you had all of West Texas pouring in, and Cruz wound up winning, not handily, but by almost the same amount. And so, he is out again, repeating what he did before. Generally, this is what Ted Cruz is doing. He's going to do what he did in 2012, in 2016, in 2018. He's going to go all across the state. He's going to talk about conservative values. He's going to talk about culture war issues. He's going to talk about law and order and police and government. And he's going to go to every one of those communities and tell conservatives that you need to turn out and vote. And even if you don't think the guy at the top of the ticket is going to take care of it for you, I'm going to take care of it. You need to vote for me. He's going to do that. He has been a rock on all these conservative issues. Now, every election, he's going to continue to say exactly what he said every election and repeat it over and over.
And I don't see any moderation happening.
That's what I was going to say, Katie.
Throw that out, whoever came up with that.
Yeah, that's what's interesting is that you say, and we're seeing it, these are places where he's going to go and give his rally and give his points. But yet what we're also seeing is him trying to talk about being a bipartisan member and him.
But that's not going to work in those markets.
These places,
he's not going to say that west of 35.
Right. Not in those places.
Right. Yeah.
They don't have to be bipartisan.
Yeah. So I think we'll talk about where Colin Allred is going here in just a second, but I think we have maybe a post or something from Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick that talks, okay, here we go. Oh, you know what, guys, I'm having that flicker issue over here. So this is a quote from Dan Patrick on social media tonight. Allred never had a chance in tonight's debate. Ted Cruz is a great debater and drilled Allred over and over on his liberal voting record. Game, set, match to Ted Cruz. Again, this would certainly not be surprising if you see something like this from Dan Patrick. All right, I think we have another reaction post from Congressman Mark Vesey, who, of course, is a Democrat. Let's see what Congressman Mark Vesey said. Colin, you did a great job tonight, man. I'm having that flicker. So sorry, guys, we're having some technical stuff where it comes and goes. Thanks for answering questions. I'm sorry, I can't read it. Thanks for answering questions and not engaging in political angertainment like Cruz does all day long. He goes on and certainly is praising Colin Allred's.
Texans want results,
Texans want results, not games, exactly. So apologies. We're having some monitor issues, and so it's hard for me to see exactly what everything says while it's on in real time. Okay. Again, it's kind of like in the spin room when you see the surrogates, you know whose team they're on most definitely. We talked about where Ted Cruz is going next. Let's talk, Katie, about where Colin Allred is going next. El Paso, San Antonio, Austin, Round Rock, Houston, Missouri City.
And mostly large urban areas in the city and in the state, which of course are the more, if there are Democratic strongholds, they are in the urban areas. And so both of them are going, I wouldn't say into their comfort zones, because in both places, I mean, certainly Colin may run into some, but I think they are making their home run, as it were, before early voting starts, in areas where they're going to have good voting turnout.
Also, Allred is going out to areas where he still may not be as well known as he needs to be.
You don't see him in the Dallas area.
Right. Remember,
in this
he's still
swing.
building his.
Remember, Colin Allred, as a congressman from Dallas, most of the Democrats in Texas don't live in Dallas or anywhere near Dallas.
Right.
The Democrats in Texas live south of US 290. They live south of a line from Austin to Houston, most of them south of San Antonio. Dallas is the only Democratic county between Austin and either St. Louis or Kansas City, depending on how you want to figure it. He's from that county. He's hundreds of miles from most of the Democrats in the state. And so this has been something all along he's had to come from behind,
right,
in a state where people don't know him, haven't heard of him, don't know who he is. So he's still getting out introducing himself to these Democrats.
Particularly in the wake of this tonight, though, I think will have set him up really well. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's right.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the DFW area. I know we have viewers from across the state and maybe across the country as well watching us on WFAA+, but let's dig in a little deeper. I said earlier, you guys are so deeply rooted in Tarrant County. Tarrant County is an interesting place to me because we've seen changes over the course of the last couple of elections, and I know, Bud, you know this very well. You've studied the numbers. But in Tarrant County, correct me if I'm wrong, Beto won in 2018. Joe Biden barely won in 2020. What do you foresee happening in 2024 in Tarrant County?
We're not going to agree on this. I think Cruz will win. I think Republicans will win by a larger, wider margin than they did in the last general election, because Tarrant County has continued to grow dramatically in population, and the growth is in the northern part of the county, which is predominantly Republican, much of it evangelical, Pentecostal, charismatic, faith and values voters. I think that the economic growth, Tarrant County, Teresa, we're going to bore everybody to death here.
No, if they're watching right now, they're so interested in the nitty gritty with politics. They want to know the details. They're forgive me, I hope you don't take this as a offensive remark. They're nerds like us when it comes to politics.
I hate to break it to the viewers in Austin. Tarrant County is the third, and in San Antonio, Tarrant County is the third largest county in the state of Texas. And so, Tarrant County has grown so much. Fort Worth is about the same size as Austin. They'll both be in the top 10 of American cities with 1 million people. And so, and Fort Worth is on the Democratic side of the county. Fort Worth doesn't even have power at the courthouse because there are so many more people living in North Tarrant County. And so North Tarrant County has grown so much since the last cycle. It's all in Republican areas. Keller, Haslett, South Lake, if you look at the area along the north edge of the county, that's where the power is, that's where the leaders are, and I think that there are so many more people there now that Republicans will do better this cycle than they did last.
All right, so
I
Katie,
do
Bud
disagree
said you're
with
going to
that.
disagree,
I think
so let's
it's going
hear
to be
why.
closer than Bud thinks.
Okay.
And I say that because I think that people are so motivated to turn out. And when the voter turnout in Tarrant County has been incredibly low. And I think in this race, if we see bigger voter turnout, I think it may be closer than you think. Because when voter turnout goes up, Democrats tend to win, historically.
This is something that Democrats always talk about, that they need to go out and campaign to people who don't vote, and I always say if you're campaigning to people who don't vote, you're starting in a bad place as it is. So.
But I think given the number of new voters who have registered to vote, I think that there is something happening there.
And I will say a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was, I'm going to get my dates wrong, but whatever the deadline to register to vote was in Texas, I think it was October 7th. The weekend before, we had a reporter here at WFAA who went out and talked to people who were in line to register to vote. They were doing a drive-through voter registration. And the 3 people he spoke with, I know that's a very small sample size, but the 3 people he spoke with who were taking the time to go register to vote the weekend before all said, it's because I've never voted before and this election matters more to me than anything. Now, we didn't get into specifics about who they're going to vote for, but there was one woman who said, as a woman, this is a critically important election. So I do wonder, as I've said multiple times, forgive me if you're staying with us for a while and you're tired of hearing me repeat myself on this, but I think it's an interesting point, is since Ted Cruz was on the ballot last time, Texas has added more than 2.5 million new voters. So the question is, what do those people go and do? And the last time that he was on the ballot, he won by 215,000 votes. So clearly there are more new voters than was within the margin last time. So, that's the great unknown.
Well, let me tell you what my experience is with that. Ann Richards, when she was elected governor of Texas, which people still talk about and remember, 4 years later, and when Ann Richards ran again for re-election. Ann Richards got more votes in 1994 in losing than she did in 1990.
Yeah.
But because Texas had grown so much,
Right.
the economy had been so strong during her governorship, the Republican votes were stronger, and there were more Republicans who came and voted, and George W. Bush was elected. So she actually got more votes the second time, but lost. And so I think when you have an area that's strong, fast-growing economic success, it happened with Texas back then. I think it happens in places like Tarrant County in the state of Texas now, where so many people are flooding into Texas. People talk about they're from California, but a lot of them from California are moving here because they want the property, they want the big space.
And if jobs are bringing them
They
here,
want jobs. They want the economy, and low taxes, and so they're coming here for Texas values, and so you see people coming in because of what Texas is, not because of what they think Texas should be. I think the growth is making Texas more conservative.
So do you think that the people moving here for houses and property, their likelihood to vote is more than the likelihood of the people voting who are scared for the lives of their children, who are scared that their transgender children might be taken away from them and they would be accused of abuse, or the women who are afraid that they will die if they have a miscarriage that goes wrong? What is more apt to motivate people to vote?
This is a summary of the suburban campaign. This is both parties' campaign to suburban women is, where is your heart? Where is your wallet? What's strongest for what's best for your family?
Your heart or your wallet.
Yeah, what's best for your family? What's best for your lives? And this is the reason that suburban women are the focus of this campaign.
And 3 weeks from tonight, we'll know the answer. By this time, 3 weeks from tonight, I think we will most likely know what's happened in this Senate race.
No, I don't know. By this time, Ted Cruz won't have. We'll be thinking it's closer than it is at this point. I think those Floyd data boxes won't have come in yet.
I'm just remembering, and Bud, you described this. I'm remembering the night of 2018 in that Senate race. I happened to be covering the Beto O'Rourke campaign that night. I was live in El Paso, and the wave of emotion, because as you said, the way you described it, some of those early votes came in, and it was definitely skewed for Beto O'Rourke. And I think I even fell victim to it for a minute. I was looking at some Collin County early voting numbers, some Tarrant County early voting numbers, and I thought, this is not what I expected to see. But then as soon as some of that more rural vote started to come in, Associated Press called the race, and I thought, wow, was I wrong, based on what I was seeing. But, that's what, you cannot underestimate the power. I've heard some people who have said, as rural voters, they don't know if they have a lot of power. In the state of Texas, it feels like you certainly do.
Let me ask you about rural versus urban in the whole school choice. The vouchers thing.
That's something that did not come up in the debate.
But
I do want to say that is a question that I know was definitely one of the ones that they wanted to get to.
But many of the rural counties are not for vouchers because they feel like it's going to destroy their local schools, which in those small towns and counties is the center of everything.
Yeah.
But nothing in this campaign is centered around vouchers.
And I think it's interesting that nothing. But will that trigger any?
It is such a state issue instead of a federal issue. However, Ted Cruz, I believe, has sponsored some legislation that would be about federal school vouchers, and he has definitely said that this is a civil rights issue.
Right. And Colin's history is teachers and educator in his family. He's opposed vouchers.
But I do think you're onto something there, Katie, and we can talk about that. Like, does that drive anybody right now, or because that is a state issue and because we know that, when it came to voting for state lawmakers, we know what happened. But I do wonder if that's going to sway anybody in this election.
I hate to give the hobby school poll too much credit, but looking down their list of most important issues in the campaign. I looked down the
Vouchers
whole
didn't come
and
up?
I hunted. Education was not on the list at all. There
That's
was
depressing.
And
That's
they went all the
interesting.
way down to the 1%, and not even 1% of voters said education
Wow.
was one of their top issues.
I'm
So
going to bring that up if I can.
that was really stunning to me because vouchers are so much of the way. But I'll tell you how vouchers play into this campaign in an unspoken way, Teresa. Vouchers might be, the whole voucher argument might be the big outcome of this campaign, because since Kamala Harris pulled the Democratic Party out of the ditch where it was at the top of the ticket, and with Colin Allred running a strong race on the ticket, that means that there will be a Democrat somewhere down the ballot that wins. There will be Democrats who win county offices. There might be a Democrat who flips a state house seat. There are a couple of seats that are close. I think if the Democrats flip 3 seats, they forestall vouchers
Yeah, because we
in the
haven't really
Texas
talked
House.
about the down ballot
and
effect.
I don't think the Democrats will flip 3 seats, but I think that they're
that's a good point.
that they're coming close, and that's the thing. If the Democrats, people have asked, what is success for Texas Democrats in this campaign?
Yeah.
Success for Texas Democrats is not losing any more ground, and maybe being able to make a little bit of headway in courthouses, in the state house, and trying to keep some Democrats, the few Democrats that are in office anywhere in Texas, and trying to keep a few of the Democrats in office. And so even if Allred loses, but some Democrats down ballot win, I don't think it'll be worth the $100 billion, but it will be it'll at least be a life preserver to the Texas Democratic Party, which is out of power, so far out of power. The Republicans don't even need them to show up in the Texas House right now, but it would at least put them back in a position of some strength.
What do you think, Katie, about those down ballot races, given what's going on at the top of the ticket?
Well, I think because the top of the ballot will pull people, I think Bud's absolutely right that it will have consequences in the down ballot. And you have some races that are, the Republicans are downplaying them, but the sheriff's race, the Tarrant County Sheriff's race, with the number of deaths in the sheriff's in the jail.
If it were close, we'd be hearing about it.
And what surprises me is that it's not closer than it is, because there have been protests, there have been people down at county court. The sheriff has been named one of the worst sheriffs in the nation. It just surprises me that we haven't heard more about down ballot races like that, like the Tarrant, because I think it could be a competitive race.
Okay, we are in our final moments here. I want to stop for a second and play the closing statements from both of the candidates tonight. So take a listen to how Ted Cruz and Colin Allred finished up the night, and then when we come back, we will share our closing thoughts. So don't forget, everybody, at the top of the hour, at 10 o'clock, we're going to go live to our WFAA 10 p.m. news broadcast, and then we will be replaying for you the Texas debate. So take a listen to closing arguments.
It feels like the time has flown here in the studio tonight. I hope our viewers have gotten something out of this, but it's now time to make your final pitch to voters for your closing statements. Congressman Allred, you won the coin toss tonight. You chose to go first. Sure. You get 60 seconds, sir.
Sure. Well, I want to thank you all for moderating. You did an excellent job. I want to thank Senator Cruz for a spirited debate. Listen, we're all Texans. My idol, John Lewis, used to say that we might have come here on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. We're all Americans, and we're all Texans. We need a leader who will bring us together around our shared values. That's what I've tried to do in my 6 years in Congress. That's the exact opposite of what Senator Cruz has done. Whatever he says tonight, you've seen it for 12 years. He's been one of the most divisive senators in the entire country. If you don't like how things are going in Washington right now, well, you know what? He is singularly responsible for it. He has introduced this new kind of angertainment where you just get people upset and then you podcast about it and you write a book about it and you make some money on it. But you're not actually there when people need you. Like when the lights went out, when 30 million Texans were relying on a senator to spring into action. He went to Cancun. That's who he is. If you give me the chance to be your United States Senator, I'll never abandon you. And I'm asking for your vote and for your support in this election.
Congressman, thank you. Senator Cruz, you get the final word tonight. You have 60 seconds.
The stakes in this election are the highest of my lifetime. Congressman Allred and Kamala Harris are both running on the same radical agenda, Congressman Allred has pledged to be the 50th vote for Chuck Schumer to end the filibuster, to end the requirement of 60 votes to pass major legislation. That means if Congressman Allred is elected, we will see the Democrats, number one, strike down every voter integrity law in the country. Number two, add D.C. and Puerto Rico as states to give them 4 new Democrat senators. Number three, grant immediate voting rights to every illegal alien in America. That would turn Texas blue, and every statewide elected official in Texas would be defeated in the next election. And number four, pack the U.S. Supreme Court. That would jeopardize our fundamental rights. I've spent 12 years fighting every single day to defend jobs and freedom and security. Congressman Allred wants to destroy what we've got in Texas because he shares Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris's value. I will fight to keep Texas, Texas.
Senator, that is your time tonight.
All right, those were the final thoughts. That's how they left it. That's how both of them left it tonight. We have just a few more minutes, so I'm going to give each of you time to sort of give your closing thoughts on what you thought about the evening from the candidate's perspective. Katie, we'll start with you. What is the biggest takeaway that you hope that voters and viewers will remember about tonight?
Well, I hope they will remember the way the debate was run and the fact that there was a lot of information that was, this was an hour, and they got a lot of information out there. I hope they will remember that Ted Cruz did his usual bombastic fire hose of information, and that Colin Allred stood his ground, and not only stood his ground, but in many instances gave as good as he got. I mean, he was feeding it back to, and in fact, I think unsettled Trump a couple of times. I mean, when he said, I mean, not Trump, Cruz. You can see I'm getting tired. He unsettled Cruz. Yeah. I mean, that whole January 6th thing where he said, you are a threat to democracy. I think that actually struck home.
Bud?
I think people should remember, and this will surprise a lot of people on both sides, I think people should remember that Colin Allred is a better debater than Beto O'Rourke. Colin Allred brought fire with almost every answer, and Ted Cruz responded with fire. Ted Cruz's debate against Beto O'Rourke was really strong. He had incredible content. He had all the fire and energy he had tonight, but O'Rourke was not as strong in his responses. Colin Allred brought a lot more fervor, and for all the adoration of Beto O'Rourke, Colin Allred may be a better state candidate.
That's
and he was not demure.
I don't think anybody was demure tonight. I don't think, including any of us. I can't thank you guys enough for being with us. This was a long night. It was an exciting night. As I said when we were going into this, I would argue that this was the biggest night in Texas politics in 2024, and it was an honor to be a part of it with you guys. And I'm just really glad that tens of thousands of people have been watching our YouTube stream, and many, many, many more out there on WFAA Plus. And I hope they feel as if they're going away from it just more informed about these candidates and more informed about what it means to go vote 3 weeks from tonight. So Katie, Sherrod, Bud Kennedy, I can't thank you enough. It's been a pleasure to be up here with you. So
thank you, Teresa.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's been fun.
It was fun.
It's been
you
fun.
were up here longer than we were.
Yeah.
It's been a long day, but again, it's important to be a part of it. So yeah, it's true. Very, very late into the night. So okay, in about 30 seconds, we are going to go to WFAA's 10 p.m. news broadcast, and don't forget, then we will have the debate being replayed throughout the evening on WFAA Plus. Thank you so much for watching tonight. Remember, make a plan, go vote. It is 3 weeks from tonight. It is critically important. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'm Teresa Woodard. It's been great fun to be with you.